All right, back live with you tonight here in Focus. Let's enter this now. Report by Professor Themba Musia looking at governance issues at the University of South Africa has again been taken on review by the institution. Well, it hasn't again been taken on review. It has been taken on review by the institution. The report found Unisa was plagued by issues of mismanagement as well as supply chain problems. It was commissioned by the Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande in 2022 following concerns raised by some stakeholders. Well, the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Puleng Lenkabula, joins us now following a statement which they released themselves saying, like, why do they continue to get this bad image around the institution when the institution has done so much? And in terms of a rise, for example, in the number of university graduates, the research outputs that they're putting out there, the local and international recognition that they've managed to put together in the academic space, interesting strategic partnerships that they've formed with local and international institutions, a production of quality graduates sitting at about 40,000 at this particular point. He says, we've got all these good things that are happening at the institution. Why continually looking at this particular dark cloud? Well, she's here to tell us a little bit more about it. Prof, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mdluli, for inviting me. I'm appreciative to be here.
Don't you think it's the fact that you have not removed this thing completely, that we're still going to it? So we are unable to move past this point of the clarity on this report, despite all these numerous things that you're citing that you would have done?
I'm not sure whether there is inertia in digging deep into the constructive information and ideas around the growth of Unisa. I'm also not certain whether the broadcasters, communication people, or researchers take time to ensure that they look at the governance architecture of universities and look at whether Unisa's governance architecture, whether council, senate, institutional forum, convocation, the student representative council, or any other statutory requirement is not intact or intact. And I can say without any hesitation that the governance architecture of the university is intact. And to evaluate a university, you have to look at the governance architecture and infrastructure, and the compliance with legislative mandate and the policy imperatives of the university. You also have to evaluate us on the performance in terms of academic outputs. Are we compliant? Is our qualifications framework, are the 600 qualifications that Unisa offer, are they all accredited? And yes, they are all accredited. And we are working with 3,700 modules. A university of our size, to have all our modules and qualifications accredited tells you that there is a consonance with the governance that you're talking about and management to follow through on this. The other aspect is about the financial sustainability and accountabilities. And that's the case with Unisa. We've improved our investments, we are improving our controls in the systems of the processes, and these things, despite them being factually evident, or even the higher education, the Council on Higher Education, having reported after assessing us deeply on governance, on teaching, on finances, on digital transformation of our university, or even on the quality of the graduates that we produce. We still have the albatross, the so-called independent assessor report, which is not itself a valid or feasible report.
Even the department itself, when they go to the lawmakers, those who conduct oversight, they are asked constantly, you still have this report. What have you done with the recommendation? How have you intervened? So it's not going to go away.
Yeah, but
until the report is finalized and wrapped up, and what's supposed to be done with it is done. Or if it's being thrown away, it's thrown away, it's thrown out by the court or whatever.
That's why I'm saying the so-called independent assessor report must not be the only report that's used. Actually, it must not be. That's why I call it the so-called report. One, its quality is terrible. It's anti-intellectual. It impugns on the integrity and quality of the academicians at the University of South Africa. an area where we are most transparent than any university of the 26 universities. We can account for how you move from a junior lecturer to lecturer, to senior lecturer, to associate professor, to full professor, including to distinguished professors. Mamkheti Pakeng once raised the question, why do you say professor with masters, without publications, without supervision, give them so much from these so-called pristine universities that are not even transparent on how they determine the professorship of somebody? That's what this so-called independent assessor report talks about. Have you even evaluated who writes it? What's the scholarship and the knowledge produced? And therefore, I'm not going to accept, as the accounting officer, the Vice-Chancellor of Unisa, when there are conjecture, aspersions about the university that I lead, which we, as a collective with those I lead, try to ensure that we cradle it as an asset for society, to ensure that it gives impetus to this idea that to transform society, to transform the economy, and to participate in the global arena, whether it's science diplomacy or whether it's impact for change in contributing Africa's inputs into the global system. And that's what we are about as UNISA.
So you've moved even past the debate, even of the ministerial task team, for example, about you moving away from your mandate of a distant learning, e-learning institution.
And I'm actually, it's funny, Mr. Mluli, that you're raising this particular question. When was the report, the ministerial task team report commissioned that was led by Dr. Mapai?
I think 2022, was it?
No,
2029?
This report, no.
This latest one was 2022.
Listen, this report,
the ministerial task team precedes that.
Ministerial task team was commissioned in 2018, 2019.
Yes,
I wasn't even the Vice-Chancellor then. So where do I get involved in issues that my predecessor, Professor Makanya, was presiding over? No. Go and ask Professor Makanya, did they drift from the mission of the university? I will say, under my tenure, we've redirected the scientific agenda of the university. It is obvious in the rankings, in the outputs, in the quality of graduates and quality of academicians that we produce or we recruit. So for instance, as I speak to you, just yesterday, we got results of Web of Metrics rankings. We were number 793, we're now 736 internationally. And then in the country, we're number 7. When I joined UNISA, we were between 12 and 16. Why should I, as a Vice-Chancellor of a university that is improving, accept to be evaluated on a report that is duplicitous, disingenuous, and did not even represent what the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Bladen Zimande, would have wanted as an assessment of the university? So the law allows me to take this report into review. It also allows me and the university, not just me as an individual, the university, where it is misrepresented, where aspersions and conjecture and an ethical projection around people and their integrity are affected. That's the beauty of South Africa's law.
So do you reject the view that says you are using the court system to curtail the executive authority of the
Why would I do so? That is actually, you see, to take this into your review is not even my it's in the law of South Africa. And in the Higher Education Act, there are multiple opportunities that the minister exercises their control. And the minister is our principal. We report to the minister. We have to be respectful of the minister, but we also have to be respectful to the legislative mandate and groundings that undergird the management of universities, and that's what we are doing.
Have you, now we've got a new minister in, have you had a word with the new minister in around this particular matter? Is there an appetite, as there was, I believe, earlier in the year, February, to settle out of court, which I believe the council would have rejected, that proposal by the Minister of Higher Education? Has this new minister revived that conversation?
It's not my mandate to discuss that. All I can say, we were always, as a university, open to engage with the Minister, Dr. Blade Nzimande, Professor Nzimande now. And we are always willing to engage with the current Minister, Dr. Ngabane. We are willing to engage with all public and private or other civil society actors that enhance the quality of education. And therefore, we look forward to engaging our Minister of Higher Education and the Minister of Science and Technology, because Dr. Blade Nzimande is responsible for science and technology, and we are a scientific institution. We do research, high-impact research. We do digital systems, and we will still be engaging with the minister. So it's not the minister that we are against. It is a report that the minister commissioned which misrepresent the quality and the impact of the University of South Africa.
Yeah, I think Mr. Pitch would have said that you still prefer an independent body to assess what should happen to this report, more than the minister himself coming up with a deal to say, well, we'll keep the council in, we'll keep the management in, we won't take them out at least for the next 12 months, but let's get somebody else in there to look at that minister.
Why would we look for somebody else when the Council on Higher Education, the very institution, by the way, that the same so-called independent assessor was presiding, with a panel of experts from varied environments in the higher education system, from South Africa and across the board, who evaluated the University of South Africa in their quality assessment of the university on all these factors that I've spoken about: governance, quality of teaching, the optimization of digital systems, the pedagogies that are used, our commitment to ensuring that we address the success rates of our students, the quality of doctoral degrees and outcomes that are associated. Why would I want to constantly expose myself to unnecessary processes of assessment? Why can't you do it to number 8, number 9, number 10, up to number 26 university? What is the fetish with Unisa? So let me give you an example. We live in a context where there is competition for students from private and public universities. And you should check those who have written these reports about Unisa. You must ask the questions. What is their interest in claiming Unisa is not successful when, for instance, in 2021, we had 39% of academicians at Unisa with PhD. As now, when I speak to you, we're over 65%. That is an improvement. 2, when I joined the university, and I often remind people, the certificates of the students were in courier services, post bank, postal services, and everywhere else, but not in the hands of the students who needed to use them to apply for jobs. 379,000. And I made it a point with the collective management to ensure that we distribute this, so that our students, if they want to create jobs for themselves, if they want to look for employment, and in the aftermath of COVID-19, where competition for jobs has become quite dire. So it's very important that these successes are not dumbed down just because perhaps we are not the queen or king makers outcome. Yeah. What's also important is that if you look at the research output of the university, we're now the university that has been asked by the continent to sequence the biogenetic systems of the flora and fauna in the country. We would not have that if we were playing. We've just secured an 863 hectares farm, experimental farm in Broncospirit, which we want our students to use the gifts of their minds, their hands, and to ensure that we don't just teach people who look for employment.
Right.
But they are highly technical, they are highly competitive, they know the social questions of the country, and they use knowledge and science to transform in those. So I'm excited about Unisa. Those who dwell on the so-called independent assessor report, they'll do it at their own peril.
Let's move from the independent assessor report and maybe talk about some latest issues, which I know you've indicated you really don't want to talk about them at this particular point. But I'll ask you anyway.
It's fine.
The settlement of one of the staff with the CCMA, which would have implicated the registrar.
No, but Mr. Mdluli, you and me know that if you're a discontented member of staff, let me say here, well, if the internal mechanisms do not work well for you, you have the CCMA as an option for you as an employee of the university or as an employee anywhere to go to the CCMA. If there is a settlement or an outcome, whether it's favorable to you or to your institution, it is both your obligation as an employee, as an employer, to ensure that you enact the outcomes of such. And therefore, if the candidate was found to have been treated in a hostile environment, or the demands you would have made required for us to settle, who am I to act against the outcomes of such processes in a country that is trying to correct abuses of authority and power and the rights of staff or even the rights of people? So we did accede to the settlement because it had found that there were wrongs that had been enacted. In our own disciplinary processes in the university, the findings were similar. So I'm not going to pretend and now be above the courts or be above the CCMA. I have to comply when the outcomes are favorable to me as a person or even as an accounting officer. I also have to comply whether I like it or not if they're not favorable to me and they're fair to the employee who registers. And yes, there was a settlement of 500,000. And it's very important that we accept, and some have said, no, it was a bribe. Did we bribe the CCMA? Has the CCMA stopped to be an independent arbiter and conciliatory environment for that? And so people must not come to you, lie with a straight face on things that they know. They've gone to courts, they've lost, they've gone to the CCMA, and now they have to fight in the media or in the public.
So you're of the view that the PwC report will still stand?
I'm not certain what you're talking about. There are multiple PW reports.
Well, the one that has got to do with Professor
that report is still under review. We're still not legal review. You know, when a review or an investigation has been undertaken, anyone who is part of it or implicated has the right to respond, and I think we're in that process. I cannot divulge the details until such a process has been completed.
So that whole conversation about the report, of course, is around the question, which I would have touched in my opening, that you are purging certain senior members of staff who disagree with you.
I'm not, you know what, it is quite weird that I could be seen as purging people. No, actually we're recruiting the best minds in the country. So right now, we have many distinguished professors that are interesting. We're dealing with the catalytic niche areas around how to ensure that Unisa is a partner to our government, is a partner to the continent in imagining the solutions of the future. So we have people like Professor Liu, who's very knowledgeable on the square kilometer array, something that our country has invested so much money on. We are investing in colleagues who are coming and dealing with the automotive industry. We have Professor Sekwe, who is helping us to reimagine how medical hospitals of the future that engender technology, as we do at Unisa, in our teaching, in our research, in our engaged scholarship, could work. Yeah. So I'm not interested in being told I'm purging people. I'm interested in a fair assessment of what is the quality that Unisa is recruiting or is harnessing through creating developmental projects for early career academics the next generation of doctorates, the next generation of professorate. That's where the discourse must be going.
Yeah. Interesting that you highlight, I mean, you've said it at least 4 or 5 times, Unisa's going towards technology. And one of the things that the Democratic Alliance would cite coming out of the Independent Assessors Report is inadequate ICT systems for the size of the institution.
I think that's mad. That's madness. That's madness. We're not going to work on people just waking up and making statements that cannot be evidenced that cannot be supported with evidence. So before I joined the University of South Africa, and now I'm not jealous, let me put it in quotes, I'm very affirming of the good that I found at Unisa. Unisa was the only university in this country when, during the hard lockdown, that was still fully functional because it was already, and it had already moved its staff, its students into the technological arena. Teaching, assessments, interactions with the students were already on the digital platforms. The students already needed to use devices, whether phablets, tablets, or even ensuring that the formatting of the teaching systems were on phones to help a student no matter what their economic environment was. And therefore, this is the beauty that I found at Unisa. However, there were technologies. My maiden speech at Unisa, for instance, collapsed. I asked the then CIO, actually before I did my maiden speech in 2021, I said, Miss Poppy, I should remember, I said, I'm not very sure I trust Unisa. When the civil rights leader from the US was supposed to deliver the Steve Biko lecture, things collapsed, you know? And then I said, no, we will have to pre-record before we do the maiden speech, because I have this feeling that our systems are not as strong as we would like. And indeed, midpoint, because we had pre-recorded, we uploaded. So I often say to people, they should have reminded, I should have worn the same clothes that I had worn in the pre-recording. I didn't do that. That's the thing of the past at Unisa. We have stable learning management systems. We have stable infrastructure systems in terms of digital systems. There are some people who have been affected. Well, it's not just SASA or other public systems that hackers have visited. We work with interdependencies such as other institutions, whether you think NRF or CSIR, but where there's a knowledge base on digital systems and cybersecurity and associated to ensure that we protect and cushion our systems. And we do so because we understand none of us is free from that.
Let's stay with the technology question because I'm out of time. I'm pressed for time.
But it's wrong for anybody to make claims that Unisa doesn't use. If you're a student at Unisa, you write your exams online. You have a proctoring system online. At a scale of 400,000 people and more, we also empower other universities in the country and in the continent, including TVET colleges. So I'm not certain whoever that person from DA, I don't know them, I cannot account to them, I don't account to them, but I account to them if they raise questions and they want us to raise them in Parliament and anywhere. We are always open as the university to account.
Did I hear you correctly to say you will not apologize for your method of procuring laptops instead of going bulk?
Yes.
What did you mean?
No, it's very important. There's an assumption that Unisa has opted for corrupt modalities of provisioning or procurement. And that assumption has been constantly being projected in the public as though we don't know and cannot account for the decisions and the quality of the strategic decisions and outputs that as a university we have created. So I'm not going to apologize because one, we did not violate the supply chain policy of the university or the laws of the country around how you buy or you procure processes, systems, or even assets, small assets such as laptops. Two, the delegations of authority of the university were complied with. So why should I apologize for creating with the team, the management team, decision systems that enable productivity, great outputs, efficiencies, and agility in a system where people did not have laptops for over 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years. And we solved that problem within 6 months. Why should I be
Whether you got value for money or not?
Actually, we got value for money. Yeah. Because for the 3 years that we have been saying, you get your own device. If you are happy with a device that doesn't matter what brand, we don't care about that. The operating systems, the efficiencies, the cyber security, and other associated matters that make a university or a science system work. So I am not going to apologize, and I'm sure the management of the university is not going to apologize. Because why should we apologize for having complied with the law, for having complied with our own policies, and for creating productivity, efficiencies, and agility in our system? Why should we be apologetic for enhancing excellence?
Let's leave it there for tonight. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming in, especially in the studio, to share that intervention with us this evening.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
That's Professor Puleng Lenkabula there joining us. Right. What's making news tonight on In Focus when we continue next? Stay with us.